Well, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Papa's Workshop. These are for Adam, Brady, Luke, and Brenna. Before we get started, though, we got to check in with my assistant. There she is. Hard-working dog that she is. This is not a treat. It's just a remote. Yes, I know. Oh, my goodness. You ready to get to work? All right. Right. This time we got to start on the bracket feet. And this is an example of a bracket feet. It's just two boards that have a mitered, and then they cut this shape. And that gives it that, then of course you got this design here. This isn't exactly what we're going to make, but it's the same idea. Now there's, like everything in woodworking, there's a bunch of ways to do this. Just all over the place. You basically got to make a miter, and you've got to make this curve, and then you got to make this curve. So there's three things that you got to do, and you can do them in any order. I've seen it done. I've seen where you cut this first and this shape, and then glue them, then cut the miter and glue them. It's just all over the place. We've got a little extra problem or opportunity. Is in the front. We've got our profile, so we're going to have an extra little bump on the front legs, on the front part of the front legs only. So that's going to make it a little different. So what I'm going to do for this project is start by making the miter first, and then we'll put a little floating tenon or spline in there, I guess what you call it. I'm going to do all that first while the stuff is square. I also have a little challenge in that the board I had was a little too short to make them like, a pattern like this and a pattern like this, and then for the back feet, keeping them all the tops along the side. What I had to do is put one this way and then turn it around and put one this way on the same board. So I don't have the luxury of them all being oriented the same way. But I was able to get it so that the two miters in the front will match. The grain will match on those boards. So let me show you where I've got here first. And I do with the pattern there. So I've cut the miters. And see, so I've got the pattern. Pattern goes there, and then of course its mate is here. And then, but I had to get it closer together, I have to flip it and do this one this way, and then its mate is there. So those will form the two front corners, and then the back I have to flip it again, and then the back corner is more or less flat. There's a little curve to it from what I can see from their pictures, but not much, not as much as the front. And the back, the very back, will be a poplar, just a poplar board I got to cut in half, and it just has a straight angle on it, So it'll do some blind dovetails to the side of these cherry legs. But anyway, so I've got this already set up, or the miter, and then I'm going to use the spline to fit it in there. So now I know it's all square. To cut this curve, I'm going to glue this before I cut this curve, and we'll have to come up with a stand. I don't know if these are high enough. This may not be quite high enough. it's high enough for this leg, but anyway, so you put it on a block like this in the bandsaw, and then you can cut this, and then you can flip it around and cut the other one. This leg may be too tall. Yeah, this leg's too tall, so I have to make another little block. So that's going to be the last thing I do. But before I can glue this, I've got to cut them into pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the profile, this inside profile, on each one of them, and then we're going to glue these mitered corners. Yeah, then when that's dry, we'll cut the outside profile. Now the front, like I said, it's going to have, I don't know if you can see on that picture, it's got an extra bump on that leg. Oh, here's a blow up. See, we've got this extra bump right there. So we're going to have to shape this part of it by hand. Basically this whole front by hand, but I know that's going to be 5/8 lower than this part here, so we'll have to take the bandsaw, cut a straight cut 5/8 off of that, and then when we cut this shape, that'll give me where to go in straight to this line. It sounds confusing, but that's the way we have to approach it. We can't do it totally because it isn't just a smooth deal like this one. All right, so we're going to cut these out on the bandsaw, get those shapes, and then we're going to glue. And there's my. All righty, we got those cut with this profile, and I went on the spindle sander and just cleaned up the bandsaw marks while I had it in this mode. So now we're ready to glue these like this. And there's just no good way to hold these things. We could use those little straps with the rubber like we did on the frame, except this is too wide and we don't have enough room at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as binding tape. It's a little stretchier than regular masking tape or painter's tape. And I've got a straight edge here, so I got both of these pushed against the straight edge and against each other. And if I have enough hands here, we want to get these all tight. And we're just going to put some tape across there. And I'm stretching it a little bit as I put it on there. All right, so what we're going to do then is put glue in the joint, and then we just fold this up, and the tape holds that tight. And then we'll slip in the spline. Now, I'm using plywood. If you used a hardwood spline or tendon, it needs to go the grain needs to go this way, right? Because a board with, this is plywood, but if the grain's going this way, it's easy to break it that way. So you don't want it in there, you want it going against it. So a hardwood piece that's that long with the grain going this way is pretty fragile this way. So I use a plywood, and so it's got grain going this way and this way, but the bigger ones are going this way, the bigger plies. So that's why I use the plywood. So let's put some glue in there. And get my super duper glue opener. And we can just kind of spread this out. All right, abracadabra. Too much glue. Hey, you notice that I've got that way back here toward the inside, because we're going to cut off 5/8 off of this side. This is the side of, this is the front, so we're going to cut 5/8 here, but we're going to cut 5/8 all the way there, so that's only going to end up being this thin, this thick. And then we got the 5/8 curve, so the frame is actually, it's only going to be on the frame this much, so we're going to have to build this up on the outside after the fact. There, so that's one. Oh, we're just got to do the same thing on this other one. And then we'll let it sit overnight, and we'll be ready to do something tomorrow. All right, so here we are the next morning, and we got these glued up. So the next, we've got two things done, right? We got the miter, and we got this profile. So now we need to do the exterior profile. You know, this curve. But before we do that, I need to mark exactly where it is on the frame, because that curve, this would be the frame. That'll be the frame like that. So that curve needs to start right where that frame is. And since nothing's perfect, we got the difference between the 90 on the frame and the 90 on the feet. You know, they're off just a titch here and there. So what we need is some repeatability to position it there, make the marks, and then be able to cut and trim it to that point and get it back in the same spot. So we could do like we did on the frame, put two dowels to have repeatability. But what we're going to do in this case, these are just glued to the frame. And you see it, by the time we trim this off, only 5/8 of it's going to be on the frame, just a little bit. There needs to be some more support behind there, and on the original there was. They put some boards, secondary wood back behind there, and they actually used a piece like this to go in that corner, like this, and made it slightly longer than the bracket foot, so that all the weight was on this part of the, because the part of the bracket feet was just resting on the applied molding, and that wouldn't hold. So they have this, really the real foot was behind it and just glued to it. The problem with this method is that this foot's going to expand and contract this direction, and this is not. And so it's going to give, something has to give. These are probably crack. And that's what happens if you read about the Townsend chests, and the picture of the one at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which is where the one I'm going off of. It has a repaired, I think, more than one foot that's been repaired, because this is not long term this is not going to work. What some of the contemporaries did in that area, I think it might be Boston, but I don't remember exactly where I read it, but the Townsends did them like this. But what we're going to do is take blocks of wood like this and put them in there. Now, so one block is the grain's going this way, the next one down, the grain's going this way, and we alternate all the way down. So we'll have long grain to long grain glue contact on one side and then on this other side. So it will glue really well and strengthen this foot, and it will expand and contract with the rest of the foot. And then we're going to put a piece at the bottom, a longer piece there, and then we'll put another piece there, and then we'll just alternate these all the way up. Like this. That way. So that's what it'll look like. This is going to be a lot thinner, so not to worry. So what we're going to do, since we're going to have to do all of this anyway, we're going to take and glue these first two bottom pieces onto the frame. Then when that's sitting there, we've got a reference that we can repeat. So that's what I've got this clamp to test it and test the fit. So we need to glue that one on, and we'll glue the long one in on that side, and then we'll clamp this in and glue the short one in, make sure it's in there right. So once we got that glued up, then we can mark this all and all right. So here we are. We got these little things glued on, so now we can just go like that. And then I took a pencil and traced this profile here on the bottom of this. I don't know if you can see that well enough, but there's the line there, and this is the line right here. You can see I cut this I did this on the table saw with them flat like this and went through. This is the front of the front, and we're going to have this section's higher than this, so I'm just going to cut some of that waste away, and then but the next step after I cut that slot was on the bandsaw. I set it this way and then clamped it on there, and then cut this outer profile. So this is roughly, I mean, all I'm doing is we're going to have to do this whole front of the front with carving tools and rasps. It's all by hand. So, but anyway, I just knocked off a bunch of that material, and then you can see the flats here. So now I got to cut that away, and then we'll show you what I'm going to do next. All right, so I just took the handsaw and cut that piece off. So now this is roughly what we're going to do now. We have to cut this side with that profile. So I've got a narrower template, and we just need to make that and then cut this out on the bandsaw again. So, but I need to get this lined up with this line here needs to be right where that corner is. So I'll bring that up, and then that's how I'm going to align this that cut. All right, so I brought that line all the way up, and I took the template and marked where the side has to come off. So once we get that cut, see, then this is the profile that's got to go this way, but of course that's going to be cut off. But we'll have the glue line for the miter will give us this same profile on this side to follow when we use the hand tools, the carving tools and rasps to get in all the way in this. And then of course this line here is where the curve meets the straight. So we'll have the same curve coming in there on this top, and then this same curve, this kind of stays parallel all the way down. So we've got some a lot of material to still remove in there, but we'll do that a little bit at a time. So right now this one is ready to cut the sides. I need to do the front rough, cut this part of the front off on this one, and use this gauge and mark where the sides, and then cut those two.